So there was an election this week, and it was a disaster for the Democrats. So bad, in fact, that former Maoist and current CNN contributor Van Jones has officially declared a 5-alarm fire.
These are our voters. These are voters that came to us in 2018, came to us in 2020, and have abandoned us in droves in 2 states that should be in our column. That's a big deal. That is a 5-alarm fire.
Now, a lot has been made about the debate around critical race theory in this election and how it was a deciding factor in Virginia. But the real issue seems to be anger about school closures, which have activated many parents politically.
Dana Jackson, whose daughter is now in high school, is an independent. She's voting Republican this year, and she sees others like her.
I have some friends that are Democrats who have never voted red in their life. And this time they voted every red box they could find. I mean, they were raising hell about Trump. And
they opposed President Trump, but here they are now voting for the Republican candidate.
Yeah.
Because of schools.
Yes, because of schools. Schools have been the great equalizer.
During the last year, as the COVID-19 pandemic forced classrooms to go virtual, she helped organize rallies to reopen schools.
I think that our children's lives are at stake, literally. Our children were locked out of school last year, and it was detrimental to this area. It was detrimental to all of the states that had lockdowns for children.
That debate has flared at school board meetings across the state and country.
Now, the COVID-19 pandemic likely cost Trump the election, and it makes sense. COVID sucks, and people blame whomever is in power. But now the Democrats are in charge, and their handling of the pandemic isn't great. Well, they get punished too. But liberals, you may be surprised to find out, are not taking a whole lot of responsibility for their defeat. Nope, they are blaming the voters for being too racist.
Some of it was dog whistle racism.
1,000%.
But it's essentially white identity politics. That works for Republicans.
Education, right, which is code for white parents don't like the idea of teaching about race.
The real ominous thing is that critical race theory, which isn't real, turned the suburbs 15 points to the Trump insurrection-endorsed Republican.
The Delta variant of Trumpism. In other words, Youngkin, same disease, but spreads a lot faster and can get a lot more places.
Now, this reminds me of Principal Skinner in The Simpsons wondering if he's out of touch.
Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
The weird thing is that Youngkin ran as a sensible moderate Republican in an age when that is increasingly rare, and won pretty handily in a state that Joe Biden won by 10 points just last year. In Jacobin, Paul Heidemann writes, quote, Youngkin ran as a classic country club Republican candidate. While happily accepting Trump's endorsement, he never campaigned with Trump and was careful not to act like the polarizing candidates, remember Todd Akin, who have cost Republicans wins in the past. Instead, he ran a Mitt Romney-style campaign, casting himself as a responsible conservative, beating back liberal overreach. McAuliffe's campaign, however, refused to recognize that Youngkin represented something different from Trumpist clowns like Madison Cawthorn. McAuliffe's campaign focused monomaniacally on associating Youngkin with Trump, placing personality before politics. With Trump largely exiled from the media, at the urging of liberal Democrats, efforts to scare Virginia voters by evoking his specter predictably fell flat. There you go. It cost the liberals for kicking Trump off Twitter. Now, the liberal strategy got so crazy in its zeal to paint Youngkin as a Klansman-like racist that the Lincoln Project literally staged a false flag event where they dressed up like tiki-torched white nationalists evoking Charlottesville. The stunt predictably backfired badly. It confirmed people's suspicions that liberals are smearing everything they don't like as racist. Meanwhile, some exit polling suggested that Youngkin may have even won the Latino vote in the state. And although we'll have to get better precinct data to make sure, the fact that it's even a question shows that simply calling Republicans white supremacists or racists isn't a great strategy. But while it's fun to gloat in liberals' disaster, the fact is that our side saw a crushing defeat on the night as well. India Walton lost her race for mayor of Buffalo after winning the Democratic primary to the incumbent Byron Brown, who was forced to run a write-in campaign. The campaign against India Walton was particularly vicious. The chairman of New York's Democratic Party compared her to David friggin' Duke after several top Democrats in the state refused to endorse her after winning the primary. New York Democrats even teamed up with the state's Republican Party to help Brown get the signatures needed to launch the write-in campaign. Vote blue no matter who. According to Branko Marcetic and Jacobin, Brown was also helped by a bipartisan political establishment united against Walton. New York Republicans put up a united front with Brown, with right-wing party members, most of them outside of Buffalo, making up a third of the signatures they helped collect to try to put him on the ballot. Together, they fear-mongered about Walton using a playbook indistinguishable from the red-baiting tactics Republicans have used the last few years to rile their voters up against Democrats. Now, the nature of the attacks on India Walton were particularly disgusting. India Walton grew up very poor. She got pregnant when she was just 14 years old. You can imagine what her life was like as she struggled to make ends meet. In the campaign, thus, she was punished for being poor.
In 2003, records show the Erie County Department of Social Services brought a fraud case against Walton because of $410 in public assistance in the form of food stamps that she received in 2002. The government claimed that Walton, quote, received income and or wages that were not budgeted against the needs of the household, which caused overpayments of assistance to defendant.
This is not uncommon. So when you receive food stamps or cash assistance, you have to recertify every 6 months, and that's generally when people report their income. I had picked up a second job and I got $295 extra in food stamps that I had to repay.
According to Branko Marcetic again, Brown successfully turned the election debate to the petty personal mistakes of Walton, a woman who became a working mother as a teen before becoming a nurse. She was charged with $295 worth of food stamp fraud in 2003. She owed $749 in back taxes in 2004. She was stopped for driving with a suspended license. She visited her cousin before he went to jail. She failed to show up for a court summons sent to the wrong address. She wrote a rude Facebook post, and her car was towed just last month over unpaid parking tickets. It worked. A week before Election Day, more than half of the voters said their opinion of Walton had gotten worse since the primary. Now, India Walton's loss was devastating because it seemed like it was a done deal after she won the primary, but also because getting a self-avowed socialist in an executive role in a large American city would have opened up a lot of possibilities. Remember, Bernie Sanders started his career as a mayor, having to oversee things like keeping the streets clean, plowing snow, making sure the services are running efficiently. That proved to the voters that he could marry his radical critiques with competent management. Congresspeople, on the other hand, like AOC and Ilhan Omar, don't have that kind of responsibility. I mean, it sounds harsh, but Congresspeople are essentially glorified posters at this point. And while it is true that the ruling class and their puppets in the Democratic Party played all manner of dirty tricks to defeat Walton, the fact is that they were successful. There is no referee in the sky that we can go cry foul to. The reality is they had the power to do it, so they did. And that is a bleak, bleak prospect to accept. But accept it, we must. Because we invest so much time and energy in the big electoral races, the left simply does not have the institutional power to really get across the finish line for those bigger offices. The only thing that will give us the institutional power to challenge the two parties of capital is to build labor power. Organized labor is the only counterweight to capital. Buffalo's labor density is about 20%, which is way higher than the national average, but is still quite low. Had Buffalo's labor density been closer to 50 or 60%, there is no way that Byron Brown could have pulled off a write-in win. Now, we make fun of liberal idealism, which says that voters simply have racist ideas in their heads, and that is that. But sometimes we on the left suffer from idealism as well. Our argument is that if the right candidate runs with the right program and principles, people will see them as a viable alternative for the status quo and vote for that candidate. But people simply don't buy it right now, because they suspect correctly that when they get in, they won't do any of the things they've promised them to do. They won't be able to do those things because they are not buttressed by a powerful and militant organized labor movement. And when we bemoan the fact that Biden and the Democrats are throwing away their chance at passing these big pieces of legislation that will help solve the myriad crises we face, it completely hides capital. It's not that Biden isn't getting anything done because he has a precarious majority, although that is certainly true, but because there is no effective counterweight to the power of capital. If Biden had more Democrats in office, there would be even more politicians doing what Manchin and Sinema are doing right now. You know how I know that? Look at Obama's first term. We have to focus on power and structures, not personalities and individual political decision-making. So while the results this week paint a bleak political future, there is hope in the rising militancy of the American working class. On the same day as the elections in Virginia and Buffalo, the striking workers at John Deere rejected the contract that the company says was their final offer, a contract that included certain gains. That kind of militancy is something we haven't seen a lot of recently here in the United States, but it's the kind of thing that builds power.
The thing is, like, we have to keep in mind in this moment when we're looking at whether it's a victory or a loss, we have to look at the past and look at situations where the left has been victorious, working people have been victorious. And the thing is that they did it in sometimes harder situations, and they ended up amassing greater power and pushed their way into office. And yet they still came up against certain limitations where they found, oh, actually, we can't just immediately put our program into the works, even though we effectively hold this amount of power in government, either executive offices or legislative offices. And it's because the thing we have to just keep in mind all the time is the fact that, like, in capitalism, capital is the most powerful force in society. And so any politician, regardless of their particular principles or ideology, are going to be coming up against the power of business. The fact that if you're a politician in your district, and you say, I want to do this big, great welfare program to the benefit of working people in my district, the corporations in that state might say, I don't know if I want to do business in your state. I think I'm going to get up and move and drive up unemployment, and you might not get reelected next time. Like, that's a massive threat that capital can wield at any moment, truly. The fact that like these massive corporations have so many plants, like the Amazon has so many plants across the country, that if they want to punish a politician, it's not going to hurt them that much to move one warehouse or one fulfillment center or something. Yeah. That, like, they're going to get more out of the, punishing the politician than than hurting themselves in a minor way in that immediate sense. And so that's, like, again, I think the point of, like, that's what Biden's up against. It's not two politicians. It's the American ruling class right now.
Cale, if you were running for governor of Virginia and some Republican CEO from a private equity fund said that you were trying to install critical race theory in schools, how would you respond?
I'm a Reedite through and through. Critical race theory is degenerate. It's no. Read Marxism. I would be handing out Adolf Reed class notes. That's
yeah. I think that'll work. I think that would totally work. I think that would get the suburban moms in Fairfax County to give you their vote. I mean, I don't know. I suspect the suburban moms at Fairfax County are giving you their vote for other reasons.
That's between me and the moms. I don't know. I think if you just talk about healthcare and you say, like, yeah, I don't care about this, like, crazy culture war stuff. Like, yeah, we should, like, our schools should be well funded. Our people should have good wages. People need healthcare. And, if someone asks something about, like, the history of slavery, it's obvious that it's, like, one of the worst atrocities in human history. But this whole, like, our kids being taught, like, graduate level, like, terminology about, like, the pervasiveness of racism everywhere. No. But are liberals really obnoxious about how they talk about race? Yeah. So I think you just have to say, like, this is a stupid thing. Like, let's get down to, like, the bread and butter issues.
Yeah, it's almost like you got to do a flip side of what Youngkin did when they tried to just paint him as a Trumpist, white supremacist or whatever. Like, he never really took the bait. You can't take the bait is the thing. If you take the bait, you've already lost. There is no argument. Once you've eaten the bait, whatever you say is irrelevant. But yeah, I mean, I just that clip of that supercut of all the liberal pundits on cable news just saying just everyone's horribly racist. I mean, let's put aside whether that's true or not. It just strikes me as like self-evidently like disaster from the point of building a coalition for your politics, you know, like let's assume they are these people just racists or whatever.
Right.
Or like everyone in America is just irredeemably infused with the magic poison of white supremacy. Then what do you do about it? You know,
right.
What is your solution to that? Just simply repeating it over and over again is completely ineffective and counterproductive at building the kind of coalition necessary to defeat any structure of oppression that you may worry about in this country.
And but that assumes that you have in mind, I need to build a coalition in order to carry out my political program. Like if you're serious about politics, like the answer is so obvious that like the people in front of you, the voters, have all different good and bad, tons of weird, tons of idiosyncratic ideas about the world. And you, as the one who's trying to change the world, have to make your case and say, there's a lot going on. Let's focus on the thing that we can all agree with, which is that our healthcare system is completely destroyed, or that you haven't gotten a raise in a decade. That like there's certain fundamental issues that I just think fundamentally, like if that's what you're prioritizing and that's how you build your coalition, because you have an understanding of who people are and what they need in life. And as materialists, we say that people are probably going to prioritize those issues over, some kind of sycophantic cultural phenomena. You'll probably both like get them to support you. You might be able to, you at least have a shot at like pursuing your program. And in the meantime, like those bad ideas, quote unquote bad ideas, whatever they are, like some genuinely really bad ideas, like if it's like some racist ideas or something that you just find unappealing for whatever reason, they're probably not going to stick around if like you see each other as like, in the same fight together. Like you build solidarity, that you say like, oh, you're my brother, you're my sister. And like, we'll come to some greater common understanding about like how to be decent to one another in the fight. So but I just think that's like, that should be obvious. Like if you're serious about taking power and about changing society, like you have to make those decisions.
These people are just serious about posting. They just need to post more. And they don't care about taking power. They're fine just yapping on MSNBC. If you enjoyed this video from Jacobin Weekends, please hit like and subscribe. That way, you'll enjoy all of our backlog, as well as all of our future content, including interviews, live streams, and clips. Thank you.